Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Sharon Noble, Director of the BC Coalition to Stop Smart Meters. Welcome to the show, Sharon.
Thank you very much, Jim.
A very interesting story out of California. The fire inspector there says insurers may limit coverage for smart meter fires. What's the message there?
Yeah, this is an article that was written in an insurance newsletter just recently by Norm Lamb, who is a fire inspector for a major insurer down there. And he has been commenting about smart meter fires now for some time. And in the most recent edition, he wrote that the insurers in the U.S. are getting concerned about the amount of money being spent on smart meter fires, and they are seriously considering either excluding coverage for homes with smart meters or limiting the amount of claim that they would pay if they find that the fire is caused or the smart meter is involved. This is major, and if this should happen, of course, this would leave the customer holding the bag with trying to get their claims paid or reimbursed by the utility company or by the meter company. The insurance company has a heck of a lot more clout than an individual does, and I suspect, at least in British Columbia and I think elsewhere, the insurers must be getting some compensation back from these companies, or else they would have been screaming loudly about this long before this. We don't know for sure any of the details. I've asked Mr. Lamb if he would provide me with some specific information, and he said at this point he's unable to, that he has been at conferences, has read internal documents that he's not privileged to talk about. But the fact is that this is becoming a major issue, and you can be sure that if insurers in the U.S. stop covering homes that have smart meters or stop paying claims for fires that are caused by smart meters, that it will follow here in British Columbia very shortly, because many of the insurance companies are affiliated with those in the U.S., and they follow each other's guides. If there's a risk, whether it's, smoking or asbestos or whatever, insurers cover themselves. Their job is to make money. And if they're going to be paying off huge claims like this, they're going to cover themselves off.
Do we know how much insurers have had to pay to cover smart meter fires in British Columbia?
No. They will refuse to provide that information, even at fire homes where it's known by the owner that the smart meter was the cause. They won't provide the inspection report to the homeowner. They won't say a word. This, to me, smacks of collusion. The homeowner has a right to see that report. He's paid for it through his premiums. But yet the insurer is telling the homeowner, no, that's our report. We paid for it. No, the insurer didn't pay for it. The homeowner paid for it with his premiums. And why hasn't the insurance company come out with more statistics? I haven't seen anything in Canada about insurance companies and paying out for claims. And we know it's happening. So if they are paying the claims, then under the contract they have a right to subrogate. That means go back to, for instance, in a car accident. If someone is hurt and a claim is paid, but it was the other person who was guilty, was found guilty of causing the accident, the insurance company will subrogate against that driver's insurance company and will be compensated. If this is happening with smart meter fires, as I suspect it is, they're not out of pocket any money at all. Yet they're increasing premiums for people. I've told you before, there's a woman up in Vernon who had a smart meter fire. Her claim was paid, yet her premiums were increased $800 a year. This just isn't right.
Well, if hers went up $800 a year to cover that fire, what's the future for people in other fires? $800 more a year?
Or no coverage at all. That's what the U.S. people are saying. They may limit the coverage. That means, they may pay only a portion of the claim, or they may waive it. They may say, if there's been a smart meter fire, we won't pay anything. And then we're on our own.
Well, this is very similar to the information you gave to us first about Lloyd's of London refusing to cover any health damage caused by electromagnetic radiation, including that comes out of a smart meter.
Absolutely. is exactly the same. So that cell towers, cell companies, Wi-Fi companies, hydro, they will have no insurance. The problem with that as well is that the government protects the cell tower companies because they are following the Safety Code 6. They're following the government guidelines. This is why it's so very important for individuals who are leasing their land or property to cell companies for towers need to know that if there is a lawsuit, it will go against that landowner, that property owner, not the cell phone company. And they won't be able to get any insurance to protect them. They will be sued into bankruptcy.
You mentioned that BC is updating its Fire Safety Act. Anything in there about smart meter fires?
I don't know yet, Jim. The legislation was tabled just this week, and I haven't been able to find a copy of the new act yet to read it. What I think is probably a little bit more than just coincidence. This is a new act that's being revised, supposedly to include some of the concerns that have been raised by others. It's the first time it's been revised since 1979. Now, I wonder if some of these others who have raised issue are the people in the coalition. We've been talking about the fact that the act is not being followed, that hydro is allowed to remove its meters from the scene of fires, that fire departments are not providing reports in a timely fashion, that no information is being tracked on the causes of fires. If it's a smart meter fire, it's just lumped in together with electrical. That's not good enough. And the members of the coalition have been extremely vocal in their unhappiness about this, as have I. And I am pretty sure that our concerns have raised this issue to a point where they're taking a look at the current act. Now, my hope is that the current act will maintain the fact that nothing can be moved from the scene of a fire until the fire inspector does his job. I hope that hasn't been eliminated or that hydro has been exempted from this, because if it is, that would be very bad. I'm hoping it's been tightened and that it will be enforced. Right now, the current act is very strong on this. It says nothing can be removed from the scene of a fire. It's just not being enforced.
Yes, well, it reminds me of the Harper government environmental rules. They said we now have the toughest environmental rules in the world kind of thing, except they fired all the people who enforced the rules.
Yep. Pretty cute, isn't it?
We'll have more with Sharon Noble right after the break.
Unbelievable harmony, spectacular performance, the ultimate tribute to the Everly Brothers and Simon and Garfunkel. Bird Dog and the Vintage Electric Band coming to Fort Langley, Mission, White Rock, West Vancouver. Buy online and save at ontourtickets.com.
In Goddard we trust.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Sharon Noble, Director of the BC Coalition to Stop Smart Meters. Sharon, you say there are instances now where they've reinstalled analog meters. What's happening there?
One specific case that I know of, Jim, happened in the Fortis area, in the inner area around the Okanagan, where Fortis has about 115,000 homes that they provide electricity to. We all know that these smart meters, any digital meter runs on electricity, and if it gets moisture inside the meter, there can be arcing and fires. One person received a new smart meter just a few days ago and immediately noticed that there was moisture inside it. So she called Fortis, told them what was happening, and fortunately Fortis realized how dangerous that was and came out immediately and put on a new smart meter. Within a few hours, it had gathered moisture again, and they came out and replaced the meter. A few hours later, a third meter was leaking and had moisture in it. Now, whether this is condensation or leakage from rain, we don't know. But in either case, moisture is moisture and is inevitable. This is going to happen. It happens with analogs. But analogs don't run on electricity and therefore will not catch fire. This third meter finally was replaced with an analog meter. And the Fortis people seem to be dumbfounded by what is happening. So this person, yes, received a new analog meter because all of her smart meters leaked. I would encourage everyone who has a smart meter or a digital meter, even if it's not a smart meter, to keep an eye on it. If any moisture is gathering inside the face of that meter, call Hydro or Fortis immediately and demand that it be replaced. It is a fire hazard with or without moisture, but with the moisture it's a much greater fire hazard.
And I was going to say, here in BC, moisture a problem? We live in a rainforest.
Yeah.
How come they're getting equipment that can't resist moisture?
Well, that's a good question, Jim. And we all know that with heating and cooling, there will be condensation inside that meter. It happened with analog meters. It's going to happen with these too. Another thing that I heard that is disturbing, and I don't know if it's happened here in BC, but it's happened elsewhere. These meters get hot and heat in conjunction with the lithium battery inside is not good. So in some instances, the meters have had holes drilled into them to let the heat dissipate. And this is going to let moisture in. I mean, drilling a hole in something like this, that's so irresponsible. That's not the answer. You're just creating another problem or adding to it.
French consumers are now speaking out against smart meters. What are their complaints?
Same as ours. Many of the complaints also are with regard to security and privacy. But many of the complaints that we're getting from all over the world, not just from France, is the costs and the fact that these meters do not do what the companies say they will do. There was an excellent article written by someone in the U.S. That I circulated just in my update last night that traces all of the financial implications of these meters and the fact that the meter, as we saw from all of the propaganda, all the brochures that Hydro and Fortis sent out, they say the meters will contribute to modernizing the grid. This is just junk. It's not true. The meters are just meters. They do not help modernize the grid. Our grid in British Columbia is the same old grid that it's been for decades, with poles that blow down, with lines that break in the windstorm. If this $1 billion or $2 billion had been spent on really modernizing the grid, things would have improved. But as this article says, outlines, and as the people in France say, this doesn't contribute to making anything more efficient. All it does is allow the utility companies to get our data, to fire the meter readers, and to deflect the money into to their corporate friends, to the people who are affiliated with the governments. The only thing green is the money that's going into the corporate pocket.
With that being the case, then, have the French people a more effective way to make their complaints heard?
Yes. Yeah. I lived in France for 2 years, and I think it's demonstrated by also the people in Quebec. The French people are by nature more likely to speak out. They rally, they protest about everything. And their motto is, the government should be afraid of us. We should not be afraid of the government. And they do hold their officials to account. You know, if they find that this is going to either waste money or if it's going to endanger them in any way, you can be darn sure there's going to be major, major protests and things are going to happen there. They're not going to be forced to take something they believe is dangerous or invasive as far as their privacy is concerned. But this is the same in many countries. You know, Germany's been fighting it. People in South Africa are fighting it. This is not isolated to British Columbia or even to North America. There are many, many people fighting this, and more joining every day as they're learning about the problems.
Why do you think politicians in BC have been so reluctant to address the issues?
I wish I knew, Jim. I don't know.
It's like BC Hydro is some kind of sacred cow that you just can't criticize.
I don't know why the politicians are not doing more about this. Granted, you know, I think we've given them an out. Granted, they were sold a bill of goods probably by Itron. They were probably pressured by, you know, various corporations to do this. They may have even bought into the idea that it was going to be good for the environment. I know Elizabeth May, for instance, a very dedicated, intelligent politician, a wonderful lady. I spoke with her about smart meters early on, and she was convinced that they were going to be good for the environment. And that's why she was supporting it, even though she knew and was concerned about the radiation frequencies. She's very aware that wireless radiation is dangerous, but she thought that the environment was more important. But these meters do not save the environment. It's not saving energy. It's not reducing costs. And in fact, it's endangering the environment. These things are made largely of plastic, and they have a much shorter lifespan of only 5 to 7 years, where the analogs were made of glass and metal and lasted 30, 40, 50 years. So having to replace these things every 5 to 7 years requires more plastic to be made, requires recycling and all this junk. It also has lithium batteries that have, very dangerous chemicals in them. This is not good for the environment. And I wish that people like Elizabeth May could be persuaded to speak out about this, because she's very respected and people would listen to her. People like John Horgan and Adrian Dix will not speak out. The only thing they're speaking out about is the costs. And when I've told them and pointed out that the cost could be recovered if they declared these devices defective and demanded a recall, but they won't do that either. So, Jim, if anyone has a clue about why these politicians are refusing to do anything, why they continue to ignore all of the problems, I sure wish they'd let me know, because I'm dumbfounded by it.
Well, politicians who are paid off by certain factions tend not to speak out, and I would imagine the electrical workers are a big union that sends a lot of money the NDP's way.
I think the electrical union is against these things.
Really?
Yeah, they lost a lot of meter readers. Good jobs. Good jobs were lost.
Wow. So even in that case, if that was the proposition, then we still have a lot of questions to ask and a lot of people not answering the questions.
Yeah, the IBEW in many places in the U.S. has spoken out about this, and initially the IBEW in British Columbia was fighting about it, but they quieted down pretty quickly. Now, one of the things I've been told by some insiders, some hydro workers, both who are still there and some who have been laid off, fired, or retired, is that hydro has threatened them. They said, don't you dare talk about the smart meters or any of their problems among yourselves, even here at work, or certainly outside of work. One worker told me that he was threatened with being fired because he had spoken to a colleague about it. 5 hydro people, maybe more, but I know of 5, were fired because they refused to have a smart meter on their home because they knew that they were dangerous.
Wow.
This is why people aren't speaking out at hydro. They've been bullied and intimidated and threatened.
And the loss of your job, what could be worse than that?
Yep, that's right.
Sharon, anything else you wanted to mention today?
No, there are a lot of things going on in other issues like Wi-Fi and whatever, but, I think that's for another topic. I would just say that I think that people need to be more vocal. Right now, I think our answers with regard to getting the politicians to pay attention to this is that we have to make our voices louder. We need to get more people informed, because there's still an amazing number of people out there who have no idea how dangerous, invasive, and illegal these things are. And I hope that we can get more people to join with us, because, as we know, the politicians listen to huge groups, and we need hundreds of thousands of people to join with us and to complain and demand that our rights to live in our homes safely be acknowledged and recognized.
Sharon, what are the websites people can go to find out more information about smart meters?
You can learn about the health issues and the class action lawsuit at www.citizensforsafetechnology.org, and you can read about all of the other issues and catch up on updates at www.stopsmartmetersbc.com. And if anyone would like to receive updates, they could email me at director@stopsmartmetersbc.com.
Sharon, thanks a lot for speaking with us.
It's my pleasure, Jim, as always. Thank you.
My guest has been Sharon Noble, Director of the BC Coalition to Stop Smart Meters. You're listening to the Goddard Report on TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. Our popular YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Comments about the show can be emailed to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.